Good morning, everyone. Today is Wednesday, February 28th, 2024, and we'd like to welcome everyone to the board meeting. We'll call this meeting to order at 9 a.m. Teleconference number is 971-254-3149, conference ID 866-914-607#. Audio capabilities are listen only and are offered on a best effort for the public. Our meeting is also live streamed, and you can join us online by going to our website or to tctvonline.com and click on live broadcasts. Before we get started, I'd like to remind everyone to mute your phones. You can do this by pressing *6. Please unmute your phone when your agenda item is ready to be discussed. For those joining via computer, please unmute your microphone and turn on your camera when your agenda item is called. All others must remain muted. Thank you. Those intending to provide public comment to the board may attend in person or email submissions to the public comments email on our website. Public comments received by 12 p.m. on Tuesday will be distributed to the board, posted online before the meeting, and become part of the public record. You may also provide public comment virtually by registering ahead of time. To register, please email public comments by 12 p.m. on Tuesday prior to the board meeting. Public comments can also be mailed to the Board of Commissioners office at 201 Laurel Avenue, Tillamook, Oregon 97141. For more information on public comment options, please visit the Board of Commissioners webpage. Do we have anyone signed up in the room or online for public comment? Okay. Well, with that, I will welcome people in the room. It's very nice to have people in the room with us. Good morning. I'll invite everybody to sign the sign-in sheet, and we'll open the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Olson, will you lead us, please?
Well, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, we don't have any non-agenda items today, so we'll jump right into our legislative administrative agenda. Item 5 is consideration of Tillamook County Housing Commission 2023 Multifamily Rental Housing Fund allocation recommendations. And with us, we have Parker Sammons, the Tillamook County Housing Coordinator. Good morning, Parker.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us in person.
I'm happy to be here in person. And I know that that is a mouthful of a name, so we are working on a more marketing-friendly name for it. Well, good morning. Again, yes, my name is Parker Sammons, and I am the Housing Coordinator for Tillamook County. I'm here today to talk to you about the 2023 Multifamily Rental Housing Fund and the allocation recommendations from the Housing Commission. Before I begin, I just want to take a moment to refresh your memory on what the Multifamily Rental Housing Fund is and how we arrived at our ultimate recommendation. The Multifamily Rental Housing Fund is funded through short-term rental operator license fees. And I want to take a moment to express our appreciation for the wonderful contribution that the short-term rental community makes to affordable and workforce-level housing in Tillamook County. Without it, none of this would be possible. Next, I'd like to run you through a brief outline of my presentation. I'm going to begin by explaining to you the Multifamily Rental Housing Fund allocation process, followed by the process that the Finance Committee went through in their evaluations, the final project evaluations, and the proposed allocation recommendations, then a period of questions and answers, followed by a request to approve the allocation recommendation. The multifamily rental housing process begins when developers submit projects through our online portal. Those projects are then presented to the Housing Commission, where they are evaluated for a qualitative element, and the qualitative elements we evaluate these projects for are more or less the quality of life that these projects represent. So this could mean proximity to a park or services or transportation. All of the elements that are not a financial hard number essentially fall under the qualitative evaluation. Next, we do the quantitative evaluation, and that is where we take all of the financials, the pro formas, everything that the developer has submitted to us, and we put it into a calculator that we have that gives us a number that's more or less like a grade. And then finally, we make our allocation recommendations. The process that the Finance Committee goes through is they review the financials of each of the projects for things like if it's an appropriate developer fee, if they have an appropriate foundation to make their project a success. We then evaluate the quantitative scoring. So we take a look at what our scorecard told us, and we give an evaluation on that. We then establish the eligibility of each of the projects. The Multifamily Rental Housing Fund does have certain elements that each project must meet, such as a certain number of units added and a commitment to affordability levels. We then look at each of the project's assumptions, making sure that they are not making any wild assumptions like we will have no problems through the course of this construction, or we anticipate X, Y, and Z happening. So we evaluate those assumptions and make sure that they are based in reason and seem reasonable in general. We then engage in a robust conversation about each of these projects before finalizing our recommendations to the Housing Commission for their consideration. Throughout this entire process, though, there is one thing that we try to keep in mind, and that is what barrier has been removed. The goal of the Multifamily Rental Housing Fund is to lower and eliminate barriers to house affordable and workforce housing construction in Tillamook County. And so this was our North Star. Whenever we faced a difficult question on this process, we really tried to consider what barrier we are removing. Next, I'd like to introduce you to the 8 projects that applied for the Multifamily Rental Housing Fund this year. You can see that they are in Bay City, Tillamook, Manzanita, Beaver, Rockaway. So a nice spread, a nice mix of locations. And each of these projects have wonderful merits, and I'm happy to share them with you. Before I start by addressing the projects that we ultimately did make an allocation recommendation for, there was 2 projects that we did not make an allocation recommendation for. The first was the Tiny Homes on Wheels project in Bay City. There were many great merits of this project. This project represents housing innovation. It had an element of supporting home ownership, which was not present in any of our other applications. It was a very efficient use of space. They were able to get 6 units onto a single lot, and they were offering very affordable rents for their tiny home pads. The key determining factors in this project was that this project is primarily an infrastructure improvement project. The goal of this project is to provide 6 pads for people to bring their own tiny homes in and have a place to rent. But that doesn't really add 3 units of housing, which is one of the requirements of the Multifamily Rental Housing Fund. More so, it adds the infrastructure for 6 units. And ultimately, the fact that the renters must provide their own housing unit led us to believe that this project was not eligible for this fund at this time. Instead, we've made a recommendation of technical assistance, an offer of technical assistance to help this project pursue SDC fee deferment through newly proposed legislation. And this is because the funds that they were asking for from the Multifamily Housing Fund were for SDC fees specifically. And in addition to our offer of technical support, a recommendation that if this project was to build 3 of their own tiny homes and offer them as affordable or workforce level rental housing, we would welcome their reapplication to the Multifamily Rental Housing Fund in a following cycle. The next project that we ultimately did not make a recommendation for was a project by Lighthouse Management. This project also had great merits. They offer affordable rents to their current and future tenants. This project also represents the preservation of a very important rental stock in the county. And this project is very efficient use of land in a kind of interesting way. There is no higher use of this land for housing at the current time. It is a special use area. And that means that by preserving this stock of rentals, it will keep housing in this area where it's possible that it could vanish. So this is a really important project. The other important element of it is that supporting this project, we have a direct and immediate impact, as there are renters there who really do need some of the preservation work done to make to make sure that they can continue comfortably there. The determining factors on this project was that ultimately they were only adding one new unit of housing, and the rest of it was preservation and restoration. And again, we do really require that 3 new units be added. Also, there may be more appropriate funding available for this project, as the state of Oregon is looking very hard at how to support preservation of affordable housing. And again, this is primarily a restoration project, and we focus on new construction. So our recommendation for this project is an offer of ongoing technical support to pursue those housing preservation and restoration grant money, and a letter of support for Heather Crawford and her associates for supporting their pursuit of those additional funds from the Housing Commission. Now, I would like to share with you the projects that we did ultimately make an allocation recommendation for. The first project is Siegel's Rest. This is developed by Nate Palmer and is 6 duplexes located in the heart of Bay City. This project will add 12 units of housing. They will all be 2-bedroom units, and it's in the 80 to 120% AMI range. And to briefly remind you, AMI is area median income. You may be more familiar with the concept of MFI, which is median family income. And an AMI is that number, but adjusted for Tillamook County. So that number is set by HUD, and when we talk about 80 to 120% of AMI, that means that it is in the workforce level housing. Below that, it becomes affordable level housing. And above it, it becomes market rate. This project is in the construction stage, and there were some great highlights for this project, one of them being that it is in the construction phase. The other is that this is, they effectively used the support we gave them in the previous round of funding. And that's evident by the fact that they are far along on this project. They also did a lot of work to garner community support, and that was evident in the strong letters of support that they received from Bay City and other community partners. And now I'll share with you the qualitative and quantitative scores. So again, that quantitative score represents a calculating number where we take the financials and it kind of spits out our percent of total there. And so again, if you can think of these about a grade is a good way to imagine it, so a solid B. And then the qualitative score is, again, the whole Housing Commission evaluates them during their presentation, and they arrive at this qualitative score. And this is taken all of the scorecards and averaging it down to get that final score. The ultimate allocation recommendation for this project is 50% of their ask, which is $100,000, or 25% of the total funds available for this round of funding. The next project is 1902 First Street. This is commonly known as the T-Mobile building. The developer on this project is Danny McGinley from Redside, and this is 4 2-bedroom units in this mixed-use building in central Tillamook. Here are the details of the project. And you can see that it is in the pre-construction phase. A lot of work has already been done on this project, and it is ready to enter the construction phase as soon as financing is secure. Again, the highlights of this project is that it is construction ready. We do have an emphasis on projects that are closer to completion than ones that are in the pre-development stage. And this project demonstrated a very strong need for assistance on this project. Slide. The demonstrated need was that this project suffered considerably from COVID's effect on the real estate market. And without support, this project is at risk of not being completed because it is not the most financially viable thing to do. With our support, we do ensure that this project adds those 4 units of workforce housing in a centralized area where there would otherwise not be any. You can see the qualitative and quantitative scores, and I'll take a moment to address the low quantitative score on this one. This project has the potential for more units to be added, and at this time, they are not pursuing the second phase, and that really lowered the quantitative score because we like to see people maximize the amount of housing you can put in any project. However, this also called to our attention some of the problems in how we perform the quantitative scoring, and we are working to improve our process consistently, but it's an important thing for us to be aware of. The allocation recommendation on this project was 87.5% of their ask, or $70,000, or 17.5% of the total available funds for the cycle. The next project is the Maker Manzanita project. This was developed by Maker Studios, and this is a really exciting one. This company was formed specifically for this project in this area for this work. This project is a multi-phase, large footprint workforce housing project in Manzanita. This project represents 34 new units in the first phase and the potential for many more. All of them will be one bedrooms, and they are in the workforce level AMI range. They've requested $400,000, and they are in the pre-development stage. One of the great highlights of this project is that our dollars go very far in supporting it, because subsequent phases will benefit from the infrastructure that will need to be performed and constructed for the first phase. So our dollars will affect this phase, the next phase, and hopefully a third phase. This project also represents very high quality of life workforce housing. And the most important part of this project is that it is in high need of what we are calling catalytic funding. This means that this project needs a little kick to get up to the level where they can go and get either private equity, bank financing, or other grant money. And so by giving them a little bit of support now, we enable them and empower them to go and get greater funds from other sources. The qualitative and quantitative score on this project was very high, and the ultimate allocation recommendation was for 12.5% of their ask, or $50,000, or 12.5% of the total available funds this cycle. The next project we evaluated was Hobsonville Point. This is developed by Tyler Brogdon of Coastal Homes, and this is a mixed income project featuring 2, 3, and 4 plexes in Bay City. This project will add 29 units of housing and has a large AMI range of 60% to 120%. That's because the developer is reserving certain units for affordable level housing, with the remainder being in the workforce level. They've requested $250,000, and they are in pre-development. One of the highlights of this project is that it is a mixed income development, and we do not see a lot of those. They've also worked considerably with the City of Bay City and have gotten city-supported infrastructure improvements accomplished to make this project possible. This project has previously received a multifamily rental housing fund in pre-development work, and you can see the qualitative and quantitative score. The allocation recommendation for this project was 16% of their ask, or $40,000, or 10% of the total available funds. I think it's important to note one of the elements that this project made us consider is when we award funds for pre-development, we do not have what is called a clawback provision for those funds. When we award funds for construction, we do. That means that it is more risky to provide funds for pre-development. And that just has sparked a very important conversation about pre-development versus construction funds. The next project I'd like to share with you is the Anchor Street project. This is developed by Jeff Wong and Todd Johnston of their company Home Forward, Oregon. And this is a commercial kitchen project with workforce level housing above it. This project will add 4 new units. There will be 1 and 2 bedrooms. They're really targeting a hard 80% AMI is their goal. And they've requested $80,000 for some pre-development work on this project. The highlights of this project is that this is a very highly efficient use of a very small lot. I'm sure many of you have visited Rockaway and gone down Anchor Street. This property is right between the fire station and the Lions Club. And if you've seen that property, it is just a shotgun, very narrow piece of property. So it's very cool that Jeff Wong has found a very interesting way to provide a lot of value from that land. This project also has significant benefits to the community, with that commercial kitchen being available for local businesses to contract through. And Mr. Wong is also committed to providing some amount of food pantry or other services out of that kitchen where he's able. This project also supports the critical agricultural industry and the workers there. This project is really for fishermen housing. And you can see the qualitative and quantitative score. This project has some wonderful elements. There is a bus station right outside, or a bus stop right outside, easy access to the beach, and lots of access to services. The allocation recommendation for this project was 81.25% of their ask, or $65,000, or 16.25% of the total available funds this cycle. The final project I'd like to share with you is the Manzanita Pines project. This project is developed by Home First, with Ben Praise the lead. And this project is a large footprint, affordable housing housing in Manzanita. This project aims to add 60 units of 2 to 3 bedroom housing with the AMI range in that affordable 60 to 80%. They've requested $390,000 for pre-development work. The highlights of this project is that it is 60 units of affordable level housing in Manzanita. This would be the first affordable level housing in Manzanita and the largest affordable housing complex in the county. This is another project that really needs our help to have that catalyst funding to go after higher and greater funds, specifically in this case, a low-income tax credit, or housing tax credit, which would more or less assure that this project goes to completion. The qualitative and quantitative scores on this project are the highest. Part of that is that our heavy emphasis on supporting affordable level housing really helps the quantitative score, but the qualitative score is quite high as well. Both this project and the Maker project have committed to participating in the construction of a foot and bike path from their site to downtown Manzanita. And both of those projects have carefully woven in a lot of wonderful green space to really make it feel more like a neighborhood than a high-density housing development. Next, I'd like to share with you the overall, a large-scale picture of the 2023 Multifamily Rental Housing Fund allocation recommendations. Oh, pardon me, did I not get the allocation recommendation for that project was 19.23% of their ask, or $75,000, or 18.75% of our total available funds this cycle. The next slide is the high-level view, where you can see all of the data from the Ultimate Housing Fund recommendation. And one of the important things to call your attention to here is that there are 2 projects that we added a contingency for. The Hobsonville Point project had previously received pre-development funds, so we felt it prudent that those funds be reserved for construction only. That is going back to our conversation about pre-development being a more risky grant to make, and we think that we should only really be giving 1 round of pre-development funding, and that funding should then be moving towards construction. So we are really excited to continue to support that project, but we would like those funds to be reserved for construction costs only. Similarly, with the Anchor Street property, Mr. Wong in that application only requested $6,500 for pre-development funds. So we feel that the best solution there is to award him those funds, but hold the remainder until that project reaches the construction phase. And finally, here is a visual representation of our allocation recommendations with all of our projects. And here, I feel like it is a good time to ask for any questions you may have about the fund, the Housing Commission, the process, or any of the specifics about these projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Parker. That's a terrific presentation. Commissioners?
You know, I'm going to let you guys ask your questions because I have the benefit of being a part of this entire process. I don't put any of my opinions and I don't join the vote when the Housing Commission votes, but I've had all of this in depth, so I would love for you all to have the time.
Terrific, thank you. Would you like to start?
Well, thank you, Commissioner. I had not known Mr. Salmons until we crossed paths at, I think it's the city of Nehalem a week or 2 ago. I was there just to introduce myself, and lo and behold, he popped up and started talking about all this stuff and was well received. So for my benefit, would you take like just a minute or minute and a half and give us your background, so and perhaps our listeners and viewers may be interested as well, and then I'll ask another question or 2 if I can, so please.
Absolutely. My background has been a very non-traditional path to this job, but I began in real estate development in 2011, where I was doing some crackerjack house renovation, ADU adding, and I did that for many years as a side profession. Eventually, I got involved with the family business, which was the Oregon Transfer Company, a shipping and logistics company. We were undergoing the sale of our real estate assets, and that's why I was brought in. From there, I went to entrepreneurial work, where I tried for 3 years to start a affordable home ownership company based on the idea of empowering homeowners to participate in the sweat equity of their homes, basically offering to sell them a studio apartment on a full-size lot with the plans for them to turn it into a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. So I've spent a lot of time focusing on how to improve housing options in rural communities in non-metro Portland, or non-metro Oregon. And beyond that, I also have an MBA from Portland State, where I focused on housing and education issues through my time there and through my capstone project with the Beaverton School District. I hope that is enough of a
Well,
background for you.
that's very informative. Thank you. I appreciate that. So one question that just popped up, and I'm sure you can answer. What is your relationship with Habitat for Humanity? I know they have another program, and they've had some success across the county fairly recently in South County, where I live in Hebo. There was a home they completed not too long ago. What's your relationship with that organization?
Briar Smith, the CEO of that organization, does sit on the Housing Commission, and her voice was included in our evaluations and ultimate recommendations. It's important to note, though, that the work of Habitat is parallel, but not always congruent to ours. We really focus through this fund on providing new rental housing, where Habitat really focuses on that home ownership element. But they are very closely related to our work and are a partner in our work.
Thank you. So another question, does the organization, and I think I know the answer, do you specifically seek out geographic areas, or do they come to you, or do you go to them, I guess is the question.
They come to us. We have an online portal, and we do some advertising and outreach. Generally, we have a pretty good idea of all the projects going on in the area, and so it's not hard to connect those who are qualifying for our fund to the application process. And then I am there to help each of the projects through their application to the degree that they require.
Well, thank you. The last comment I guess I would make is, for many years, my wife and I owned some lodging properties, and at one time we had 14 or 16 employees. When we had 2, towards the end we had 7. And I remember, and this was pre-COVID, we were housing 5 of them at our expense, either in rental properties or giving up part of our income producing rooms because they couldn't find any housing. And so I'm very keenly aware of the housing that we don't have in this community. And so I think what you've shown us this morning is quite admirable, and keep at it.
Thank you. I think it's also important to note that these projects also improve the quality of life for the people who will eventually live there by reducing commute times, improving access to community and services. These benefit the health of Tillamook County beyond just adding housing numbers.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. Well, this is really exciting information. I'm happy to learn about these proposed projects and projects actually that are currently being built. And so it's very hopeful. I was reflecting back on when the first time I was running for commissioner, when everybody was talking about Tillamook County's biggest problem is housing, and it might still be. But we are making substantial progress, which is very encouraging to me. So and part of your work, it contributes to that progress. So I'm grateful for your work and that of the Housing Commission. I think those projects all look exciting. My question about the process is, it's clear that you didn't split all of your recommended allocations evenly. It's clear that you didn't allocate specific to their qualitative and quantitative scores. For example, the ones with the highest scores didn't get the most funding. So I'm just curious about your process. How did some of them get more and some of them get less?
Sure. So I guess I'll grab the slide I need. That was a robust conversation.
I'm sure.
We went well into the night with the Finance Committee making these determinations. We started by realizing that the focus on construction ready as being a very important element at the moment. We need housing now. And as important as it is to plan for the future and support those larger projects, getting some housing completed now is paramount. And that's reflected in how the state is focusing on distributing their housing funds as well. That focus on construction ready is just across the board the #1 emphasis. The process that we went through was taking a very hard and deep look at the financial elements and, again, those anticipations and assumptions of the project. And then we really tried to drill down to the ultimate health of the project, the longevity of it, and what their real need was. So in the case of the Manzanita projects, Manzanita Maker and Manzanita Pines, that's reflected in that even though they had those really, really high qualitative and quantitative scores, they're early in the pre-development funding stage, and they really needed some amount of skin in the game from the county to be able to demonstrate that they had the support necessary to get this project across the line. So those projects we were very keen on supporting, but not at the level they were requesting. We had two ways we could think about how we approached the allocation this year. One would be, let's find one project that we feel we can ensure makes it across the finish line now. Or we can find a way to be more utilitarian and find the way to get the greatest amount of good and return out of our investment. And so it was a very tough conversation to have, and we went back and forth many times. But once we started to evaluate how much benefit some of these projects would get from a small amount of allocation recommendation, meaning that Maker project, the Manzanita Pines, and even that T-Mobile project that didn't need a whole bunch to really get across the line. So we found that by supporting all of these projects, or these 6 projects in the way that we did, we will see the ultimate highest return on those projects. And the tools we use to evaluate our projects are just that. They are tools. And we have put a lot of work into developing these tools, but at the end of the day, they only tell us one thing. And it's only when you look at the holistic picture can you really see where the highest and best need is. I hope that answers your question. I'm happy to take more specifics about our process, though.
No, that helps a lot. Thank you. Thank you. Commissioner?
Sure, I'll just thank you, Parker, for the work that you've done. We're delighted to have you here. Parker's been with us for 6
months on Friday.
6 months on Friday. So needless to say, Parker jumped in with both feet coming into this right as we were queuing up this process, and we had to rebuild our online portal and a number of things that were sort of hi, Parker, do this now, please, because it's time. So he has done a great job for us. We're very excited to have Parker with us in this process. To the question, Commissioner Bell, of how decisions were made, there's a couple of really exciting things about the Manzanita projects, and really speaking to that catalytic funding. So with the Maker project, there's actually, it's the state facilities.
The Oregon Facilities Authority, is that the
Yes,
grant
they have a
application?
brand new program. They're trying to work out how that would work. I think it was passed in the last legislative cycle, and they have their eyes on the Maker project. They're looking at it and saying, this seems like the kind of thing that would work. So they've reached out to Parker to try to figure out how that would work. So again, that catalytic funding for the Maker project has the opportunity to queue them up for this state facilities program to use them as an example. So I think when we talk about that catalytic nature of that funding, it's really an important piece. Similarly with the affordable project in Manzanita, Manzanita's very excited about that. I don't know if you all got a chance to talk
Oh,
when
yeah.
you spoke with the mayor up there, excited about that project. And they were very specific with us when they gave their presentation that they are applying for LIFT funding through the state of Oregon. They are very, very highly likely to receive that funding, but having, again, the catalytic funding from the state or from us just bumps their application up in that process. So that's really exciting. And I think the other piece that's super exciting is these smaller units where we have 4 units in Rockaway, 4 units in Tillamook. I mean, those are local folks. Jeff Wong, I think most of us probably know Jeff from his many other entrepreneurial efforts, but being able to support that really leads us to local solutions, in that case, 4 housing units at a time. He told the story of those folks that work for him on his fishing boats that drive in from Portland every day, fish all day with him, drive back to Portland, get up again the next morning, and fishermen don't leave late in the day. So it's just really local solutions to local problems. So I'm super excited about those as well. So I mean, all of it's just really great stuff. I'm happy for Parker's work. I really appreciate the volunteers of the Housing Commission. We talk a lot about our boards and commissions and the volunteers and how they are crucial to the county. And I want to highlight for everyone, the Housing Commission has done a ton of work. Carrie's sitting here with us today. She's one of our at-large members on the Housing Commission, and they have done a lot of work. They really have taken the ownership of this project and this process and have a huge commitment. There's a broad set of voices at that table that include folks who are supportive of our local low-income populations, as well as major employers, members at large. It spans all areas of the county. We have realtors. I mean, it's just a really broad group. And so the voices are diverse and strong, and I think they are really happy and proud of their recommendations. So I hope that we as commissioners can see our way to approve those, because a ton of work has gone into them, much like when we have our TAC that does our tourism stuff and so on and so forth. So.
And I'd just like to add on to that it's because of the great work of the Housing Commission and all of the work of the people who have built this apparatus that we have these very prominent developers coming to Tillamook County. And when they hear about our Housing Commission, or because they came because of our Housing Commission, and they see our funds, they tell us that there's very little operations like this anywhere else in the state. And they're so pleased and excited that there is a way to quantify the skin in the game and the commitment this county has to housing and housing innovation and affordable housing.
Thank you. It is exciting. It's when we established this fund to be able to support workforce housing, that was the goal. And so it's exciting to see the excuse me, the solution in action. It was very specifically, we sat in this room or maybe upstairs and talked about how do we incentivize builders to build workforce housing, because it is more profitable in general to build multi-million-dollar beach houses, and people are in business to be in business. And so how do we incentivize it so that they can be profitable and we can build workforce housing? And so it's very encouraging to me, and shout out to Sarah Absher for her leadership through this process, to be part of the solution and to see this playing out in very positive ways. So thank you all for your work. I think we're ready for a motion.
Okay, wonderful.
Can I make the ask?
Pardon?
Can I make the ask?
Sure, you want to so I have to make the motion.
Okay, let me make the ask. Today I'm asking for permission to engage with County Council to draw up the contracts for each of their awards, and I will return to you for your signature for those contracts as they are completed.
Okay, perfect, thank you. So today we'll consider the approval of the recommendation, but obviously not the contracts themselves. Those
Right.
will appear one by one by one. Okay, thank you. Madam Chair, in consideration of the Tillamook County Housing Commission 2023 Multifamily Rental Housing Fund allocation recommendations, I move approval.
And I will second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Parker.
Thank you so much, Parker.
Welcome, Matt.
Morning, Commissioner.
We'll move on to item 6, which is consideration of a sub-grantee contract with Tides of Change regarding the 2023 to 2026 United States Department of Justice Office on Violence Against Women Rural Continuation Grant. With us, we have Under Sheriff Matt Kelly. Good morning.
Morning, Commissioners. Before you today is a renewal of our contract and agreement with Tides of Change. This contract is a pass-through for the Department of Justice Office on Violence Against Women Rural Continuation Grant. Essentially what it does, it provides monies for detectives to to look at domestic violence cases closer than the criminal deputies can at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. Our relationship with Tides of Change is really, really important, and it's an awesome relationship. But it's a conduit between the detectives and the victim advocates, and this money helps offset some of the costs of the general fund for the detectives to do that. It's, I believe, a 3-year grant, and it's been a long-standing grant that we've used with them. I'll answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you. I'll jump in here as the liaison to the Sheriff's Office and being a member of the board of Tides of Change. I just want to say how grateful I am for the partnership. I know that Tides of Change considers the Sheriff's Office an essential, very important partner, and it's gratifying to hear you say that you feel that way about Tides of Change also. And I'm glad that this money is available to help do that work. And it's interesting to me as I read the title of this item that to go from the high of, oh, we have all this wonderful housing, to, oh yeah, and we have domestic violence in rural communities. But it's true that we have domestic violence in our community, and I'm really grateful that we are addressing it in a forthright way. So thank you, commissioners.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate this. And I always tell this story, and so forgive me, I always have to tell it. So I started my work in the community at Tides of Change back when it was the Women's Resource Center. And the first project that I did here was a look at our systems as they related to victims of domestic violence and holding perpetrators accountable. And what we found, so this was 20 years ago, what we found was that it was challenging to hold the perpetrators accountable because it requires a very tight case, right? When it comes in front of the district attorney, that information has to be complete. The investigation has to have had the time it needed to gather everything, or those cases don't go forward and victims are not, they're left unprotected in a sense. And so having this relationship that's developed between the Sheriff's Office and Tides of Change, having additional opportunity for investigation is so important. And I'm just really thankful that we have that at this point, and I'm thankful that the Sheriff's Office has this commitment to this work. So thank you very much for bringing this forward, Undersheriff.
Well, thank you, Commissioner. I am in full support of this. I can recall when we were in business for 20-some years that fairly frequently we would get a call that someone needed a place to stay for a day or two, simply to leave a situation that was unacceptable, and in almost every case we're able to accommodate that situation. And so it's not broken, it's working, it's an integral part of what we do, and so you certainly have my vote to keep it going. Thank you.
Terrific. And I think we're ready for a motion.
Madam Chair, in consideration of a sub-grantee contract with Tides of Change regarding the 2023-2026 United States Department of Justice Office on Violence Against Women Rural Continuation Grant, I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Okay. Good morning.
Good morning.
Item 7 is consideration of a personnel requisition for a new regular full-time corrections deputy in the Sheriff's Office. With us, we have Tillamook County Sheriff Josh Brown and Lieutenant Ani Seaholm. Good morning. And I think we have Jody Wilson online. She told me she may or may not be available to pop in because she's at a conference.
I am here to support the sheriff as he needs, but I think Ani and the sheriff are going to be able to carry this item just because of the specifics of the grant.
Perfect. Okay.
So, this is a request for a position that has not been budgeted, so it's a brand-new position, hence the reason we're here, not a replacement. It all starts with Community Corrections and the funding that she has. So, I'm going to give a very broad overview and try to explain this the best I can because it is rather confusing. I brought her here as the resident expert on it. Community Corrections is completely funded by grants from the state, pretty much mainly. And part of one of those grants, the specialty court grant, wanted more UAs done on the weekend. Additionally, the JRI grant wanted our programs to be a little bit more robust, and we've struggled with JRI in years past just because of the way things were. And so we really set out to bolster those and get them fixed, which is evident by the fact that we have 2-year funding in all of those things. First time that's been for quite some time. But one of the things that, like I said, the specialty court grant wanted was weekend UAs. Our parole and probation. And
Could I ask you to, instead of using acronyms, I know what they are, but I bet there's a lot of people watching don't, if that would be.
Sure.
a urinalysis test.
Thank you.
And this is for justice-involved individuals, which are people that community corrections supervises. In this particular situation, it's those that are taking part in the actual behavioral health court or specialty court, which is what that grant funds. Parole and probation deputies do not work on the weekends. So the only way to accomplish that is to have our jail staff try to accomplish getting those UAs done, because jail staff are there 24/7. Patrol deputies aren't even there 24/7, but jail is. So we have the ability to have staff be able to do that. Now, in order to, and then the JRI are programs that we had to do in order to bolster. We've actually created a program called Brighter Futures, and this has multiple facets to it. It has, we do court callbacks, so somebody that's been released gets a reminder phone call of their court date. We do interview techniques and resume building for our inmate workers. We do food handler cards. We do interview, practicing. We do phone calls after an inmate or an AIC has been released, or we're working on doing that to see if they've gotten a job, to be able to gauge and quantify whether or not this program has been successful. So there's lots of elements in this Brighter Futures program. The ask was, in order to be able to fund these duties, these extra duties, the urinalysis testing on the weekend and being able to do those extra duties for the programs inside of the jail, we needed to be able to quantify what we needed, and what we needed was more manpower, more man-hours, And so really the only way to quantify that is by an extra person. The grant is not paying for that person, even though they kind of are technically, I guess, but realistically, the grant is paying for those specific jobs, the urinalysis on the weekend, the programs that is being done. If we can't get that extra position, our staff does not have the ability to do all of those programs up to and including the urinalysis testing on the weekends. We just don't have the ability to do that. We will not have this one person assigned to that and only that. All we're doing is we're paying money, or she's having money transfer over to pay for those specific duties that is required by those grants, and we're not paying for the actual person individually. It's very, very hard to explain, because I'm asking for a person with money that is grants, but it's not a grant-funded position. It's grant-funded duties. But the way it's quantified is by an additional position. So like I said, it's confusing. I know that there's probably going to be questions about whether this is a sustainable money. What is it going to look like after 2 years? I cannot sit here and guarantee to you guys that this grant will happen in 2 years at the next biennial cycle. That's just the way it is. I can't guarantee that grant and aid's going to come through at a higher dollar amount, or at a set dollar amount. What I can say is, when they request us to do certain direct or certain tasks, what's the word I'm looking for? What do they call it?
Tasks are fine.
Okay. Anyways, so if we do these things that they're requesting, we've showed them that what we're doing works. We're sending out, she's doing, quarterly progress reports to show that what we're doing is actually working. So there's no reason why we would suspect that the funding would not be rewarded again in 2 years, when we are able to show that we are completing what they want us to complete. Additionally, you may or may not know, and it'll get discussed in the budget hearing coming up, but we recently had the halftime OS2 retire from the jail. And instead of replacing that halftime position, we've actually just reassigned or reconfigured some workload. So now we have a corrections technician doing some of that work and whatnot. So we've actually been able to eliminate that halftime position. So typically we've been sitting at 23.5 full-time positions. We've eliminated that halftime, but by adding this full-time, we're only bumping it up to 24 even. So on paper, it only looks like a half-time position being brought in, simply because we reallocated or redistributed some of the work tasks to be more efficient in that respect. So like I said, on paper, it goes from 23.5 to 24 full FTE because we've eliminated that one. So that's kind of it in a very broad scheme. Probably ought to go to questions unless you have anything specific to bring up.
I could just talk a little bit about the grants. So these are both Criminal Justice Commission grants. And I think the point that I want to make sure and articulate is that these grants are always focused on a collaborative effort. So community corrections, I do the grants, but a lot of the money, about half of the money, goes to other agencies, divisions, participant supports, justice-involved individual supports, things of that nature. And like the sheriff was saying, we have been in a position in the last several years where we haven't been able to get all of our funding, and that's been a big part of underspending and not being able to get our programs developed. And so we've really tried to have a collaborative approach to make sure that we could reach the standards of the Behavioral Health Court grant, and then also make sure we're meeting the goals of our justice reinvestment programs. So that's, I guess, all I'd have to say extra about that. Unless you guys have any questions, I can talk about the funding more.
Thank you. Well, I'll jump in as your liaison and just say that we have been, Commissioner Scar and I have the advantage of having been in these conversations with you for a couple of years. Commissioner Olson, not so much, but he's a quick study. And so I want to start out by applauding you for successfully applying for and receiving the full funding of these grants, because a couple of years ago, as you both said, we weren't getting that. So that is thanks in large part to your expertise and your effort in this area. And I just want to completely acknowledge that this is you, so thank you. And also, because we've heard you talk about this over a period of a couple of years and in multiple meetings more recently, we knew that this was coming in the sense that we were agreeing in advance in the grant application, we were agreeing to provide weekend UAs, and we were agreeing to bolster the Brighter Futures program because that's what was required. So hopefully we will, the granting agencies will see that we kept our word, we did what we said we were going to do, and they'll continue funding us, and the funding for this position will be stable. But you're right, we can't guarantee that. So we can just do what we said we were going to do and invest now. So that's my take on what's going on. But commissioners?
Yeah, I completely agree with everything that Commissioner Bell said, and I do sit in the Behavioral Health Court steering, and so I know this has been in the works, and I know it's been a real struggle to figure out how to do these UAs. They are required, they're important, and I think we originally had it in the JRI grant, and we didn't get the full funding in the JRI grant the original time. There was some kind of back and forth, so I'm really excited to see that we have the funding and we can move it forward, because I know there was some question, and UAs are a crucial piece of the reinforcement, I think, that works in your program. You might want to talk a little bit about that. I think there's best practice related to this in the Behavioral Health Court and in your work that's not something you can just say, well, we'll do the rest of it, but not this, because it's a really important part of best practice.
Yeah, and it is a standard per the Criminal Justice Commission grants as far as how many UAs, and we're not a drug court, we're a behavioral health court, but there is some co-occurring disorders there, and so that's something that is required to monitor.
Yeah, we're working on a similar challenge with the Family Treatment Court, because that also requires the access to UAs, and it's a different population, and it wouldn't pair in with this at all, but just to say it's an important tool again there. And it's just a challenge as to where you can get those done, who can do them, that whole piece of it. So I'm excited that this solves that for your program, Ani. I think that's really important. So I'm obviously fully in support.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Commissioner. I too would support it, and I would, I guess, just point out that when you have a large department like yours with a lot of moving parts and people and 24/7 in your case, these things come and go, and would not expect you to foresee everything during the budget cycle and then have it stay that way for a 12-month cycle. That just not reasonable. I will ask, will this appear then as an FTE in this year's budget up until June 30, or is this effective as of July 1?
As soon as you guys approve it, and maybe Jody can answer this, we're gonna open the positions, and they're working with Under Sheriff Kelly on a strategy on getting those open, but I believe that we're waiting for approval on this to be able to open both
So,
criminal and correction, so it would be a part of this year
the
if we
current
fill
year.
it, yes.
So realistically, getting someone in that's already about March. So and this person, does this person need to go through the academy or anything other?
Yep,
So even, it would be on the payroll, so it could be then this fiscal year.
could be.
So
But
then,
the other important thing, and I apologize for interrupting, is she'll also transfer money over right away to support the program. We're going to start doing the program the best we can now. What I mean is weekend UAs, as well as the Brighter Futures program, getting those implemented using the funds that she's gonna transfer over this year. So the required, asks that CJC has about the UAs and the Brighter Futures programs will start. And we're gonna be doing it on whatever scale that we can do it, knowing that we have another position coming to help disperse that workload. So what the money's gonna be for, and it's for those duties, is gonna happen right away, but we are also gonna be trying to fill that position simultaneously, so,
okay,
yes.
I think I understand. So then, if you had no changes to your budget, and we haven't seen that yet through the budget committee, but when we do, if you had 0 changes, you'd actually have a net gain of 1 FTE by virtue of adding 1 person through this grant to your total staffing. Is that a fair?
Well, technically, yes, we'd be adding 1, but on paper, it's gonna look like a half.
I
because we
understand
eliminated
that,
half,
but,
yes, it
so
would
the
be 1.
FTE count would go up by 1 if
Correct.
nothing else changed, and I understand we're not at that point yet. But
Right.
okay, well, then I'm certainly comfortable, and like was pointed out, this is not something over which you have a lot of control. You get somebody in on a weekend, things have to be done, and I understand that. So, yes, I would support.
Wonderful. Okay, I think we're ready for a motion.
Yeah, I would bring up one other thing real quick, and that is that we talked about this recently. Community corrections is very challenged in its budget estimations because it's a caseload-related budget. So what you get, if I understand correctly, is at the sort of the whim of the state government based on past caseloads and what they project for the future. I also understand there's a bill in the legislature this session, and I don't know if it's still moving forward to try to augment or boost the budget of community corrections in a recognition that caseload methodology doesn't necessarily match reality. Is there anything you'd want to
Well,
say?
and yes, in a broad sense, her community corrections budgets across the state got cut pretty heavily. She uses the reference of a pie. The size of the pie got smaller, and Tillamook County's cut of that, or slice of that pie, got smaller as well. And what that is it's not as much on a whim, it's based on numbers. And across the state, the number of justice-involved individuals or supervised individuals has gone down, which is heavily because of Measure 110, because you're not seeing people that are being convicted on drug charges. And so those drug charges have reduced the overall number of people that are supervised. Hence, they reduced the number of dollars spent. But the reality is then you start losing infrastructure, and then those numbers go back up. So there's been an ongoing discussion. I believe short session there, they are working on some stuff. But yes, she took a pretty big hit on her budget, and she's balanced it out pretty good, utilizing a big chunk of carryover funds too. So, which will run out.
Thank you.
Hopefully, it gets fixed.
Yeah, I thank you. I appreciate that because I think it's a real challenge. We see it, actually, Senior and Disability Services ridiculously has the same issue where it's a caseload estimation. And so when you have a down year, they give you less money for the following year. And so you're a year behind what the world is doing with what your funding is. And so I know that it is hard, and I'm thankful that those reserves existed so that we could weather that downturn. And hopefully with the 110 stuff that's all happening, we don't know where it will go, but hopefully we'll get back to a place where we can get some balance and things will work. So thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
You're welcome. Just to expand on that briefly, it's my understanding also that the state has chosen groups of justice-involved individuals and said, you don't actually need to supervise these people anymore, and so they don't pay for it. But our organization, our sheriff's office thinks, oh, wait a second, we do need to supervise some of these people. So we've prioritize the safety of our community over the actual funding that we're getting for doing the work. So that's pretty messed up in my estimation.
It is, because some of those individuals, I think that the driving under the influence, I mean, there are some people that we really do feel in our community should have supervision. And if you go back to the ultimate goal, which is to make sure that people are successful, supervision is one of the key tools in helping them be successful and change their behavior and change their future outcomes. So it is really challenging that the state has determined that, no, those are not, I don't know if they would say dangerous or for what they would say, but I think as a community, and certainly with the key work that Ani and her team do, we know that when we do the supervision, people are more successful at not, the less recidivism, they're less likely to reoffend. So appreciate the efforts to continue to provide that for everyone in our community. And it is tough that the state's made some decisions we may not agree with.
And we have had to make some tough choices and actually put a hard line down on what cases we will accept that are unfunded. Just, we don't want to just blanket say no more, which some counties have.
Yeah.
Some counties flat out will not take a single case that is unfunded, and we don't ever, our hope is that we never have to get to that point.
Yeah.
But if the money's not there for us to be able to do it, we don't have a choice. So, Ani's done a great job, and we continue to monitor what we can and cannot take, and try to work with the DA's office and circuit court to make that, get them to understand what we can and can't take. So.
Yeah, it's complicated, as so many things that relate to law enforcement are. It's complicated to try to figure that out. And I know there are risk assessments and lots of pieces that happen when you have someone going through the court system in order to make the decision of what comes next and which ones get covered and which ones don't, by what the state says, and then ultimately by the best judgment of the courts and correction. So thank you all for what you do. I know it's not cut and dried, and it's really about helping people. So thank you for that.
I think we're ready for a motion.
Thank you. Sorry. So, Madam Chair, in consideration of a personnel requisition for a new regular full-time corrections deputy in the sheriff's office, I would move approval.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. Thank you both.
Commissioners.
Okay, we'll move on to item 8, which is consideration of a personnel requisition for a new regular full-time accounting manager in the Health and Human Services Department. With this, it looks like we have Marlene Putman, Director of Health and Human Services.
Good morning.
Good morning.
You do. Nice to see you.
And you?
Yes. We are, as indicated, looking for approval for a new full-time accounting manager position in the department. We already have one position, so this is part of our succession planning effort in partnership with our liaison Commissioner Scar and HR Director Jody Wilson, as we anticipate retirements coming in the next approximately 3 years. So this would allow us to do some training, overlapping work, and also meet the capacity and demand as we receive additional funding for projects and additional clients looking for services. Part of it actually is related to Measure 110 that was just previously discussed in terms of response to people with needs for treatment for substance use disorder, opioid use disorder, etc. So this position, again, will allow us some of the training time, but also the opportunity to address capacity needs in our finance and accounting division. We, as you will see, obviously this position is not in our current budget for FY 23-24, but it will be, we anticipate, in our proposal for FY 24-25, along with the Chief Financial Officer. So we do have funding sufficient to cover the cost for this position based on projected revenue, especially around Medicaid and services associated with substance use disorder, dental, and increased specialty services. And I'll stop there for any questions. And if Jody wanted to add anything also to this, happy to have her add, or our liaison, Commissioner Scar.
I didn't have anything to add, Marlene. Thank you.
Thank you, Jody. I will just add that Jody and Marlene and I spent 2 hours together yesterday looking at the succession plan, looking at the needs across public health and our health clinics, and really looking at what do we need to achieve in the next 3 years. So we will be meeting again in a couple of months to continue that plan so that we can look at how we will be ready to have replacements in place with training prior to the retirements of very, very key individuals. And this is a really important piece to start with. I think most of the commissioners know, but just for the benefit of the public, our public health is funded through the state of Oregon public health funds, but our federally qualified health center, which is our health clinics, are funded in a different mechanism, and it requires a significant amount of expertise and knowledge in medical billing and in federal contracting process related to how we are reimbursed for the work we do under the HRSA grant that we receive. So it's extremely complex, and we have certainly in Irene an individual who has all of that knowledge and does just an amazing job for us. But she is one of those individuals looking toward her own future of retirement with a lot of hope and joy. So we have to make sure that we are bringing somebody in to understand all that she does. So there is a structural change that will be coming forward for a recommendation, not now, but in the hopefully near future, for a chief financial officer to oversee all of this. And then we will have this manager, which will train with and back up Irene so that we are ready when it's time for her to go. There's also, I think, a medical billing technician that's a part of this. I mean, this is an entire department underneath the Federally Qualified Health Center that is absolutely crucial. So just, the more I learn, the more intensely I feel the need for these positions to be created and filled currently to ensure that we maintain the amazing operations of our federally qualified health centers. I think there are probably still people who remember prior to Marlene's tenure at the health department when our clinics were not operating in the black, when our clinics were very challenged in our community financially, and she's turned that around with the help of this amazing leadership team that we're talking about. And I don't think we want to see ourselves slide backwards. So I think it's really important that we are doing this long-term planning. So thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Commissioner. I too would support this, and I do recall having been on the Budget Committee for a long time when the Health Department ran a deficit and had to have transfer, I think it was about $750,000, and that has not occurred for a good long time. This fund is outside the general fund, and I think there's some excellent management going on. And I also would agree that when you have a technical position, and I understand a little bit about medical coding, not a lot, but enough to know that it's extremely complicated, and to have some overlap in training and understanding, since that's the source of much of the funding. To me, this makes perfect sense, and so you will get a yes vote from me to make this happen.
Terrific. I support it also. I support it in addition to supporting succession planning, which is very important for something as, it's important in all of our departments because we have people who are truly experts and holders of institutional knowledge. And if they go and there isn't someone behind them who has that information, then it just creates all kinds of chaos. So of course I support it in that way, but also I support it in taking some of the pressure off of the executive team of Health and Human Services, which I think has been overworked. And so I think it's appropriate to add some support in that area. So I think we're ready for a motion.
Thank you, and thank you for that. I agree. I think the executive teams across most of our departments are currently working managers, and it often means way more than a full-time work week, and I know that is true of this position, and having that second person in there hopefully will take a little bit of that pressure off. So thank you for bringing that up. Okay, Madam Chair, in consideration of a personnel requisition for a new regular full-time accounting manager in the Health and Human Services Department, I move approval.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Marlene. Marlene has the next item. Also, item 9 is consideration of modification number 3 to professional services agreement number 6200 with RSS Architecture PC for the Tillamook County Health Center 8th Street Annex Addition and Remodel Project. Marlene.
Yes, RSS Architecture PC has been providing the oversight or management of our project for the 8th Street building, which is completed with the exception of the generator that we are waiting for to be delivered. So that's part of the project scope, so we can't end our project entirely until that is installed. So this is an extension of our agreement from November 30th, 2023 through June 30th, 2024, which will uncover the cost of the process for the installation while we're waiting for that equipment. It's just taking longer than anticipated, like many things have most recently when we're buying supplies or equipment for construction. And I believe that's the only modification in here on the document I have, which has been reviewed by our contract officer, Rachel Haggerty. And I'm sure it's been through legal as well.
Terrific. Questions, comments?
No questions for me.
My only comment, thank you, Madam Chair. The principal of that architectural firm is Randy Saunders, a person I've known for quite some time, and he runs a relatively small architecture firm out of Woodburn, and he's done considerable work for the county, as I think all of us know, including the design of what is now a courtroom on the second floor. He did a lot of work on that. He's worked, he also designed and was the architect of record on the Hebo Fire Station. And so he's made a living servicing a lot of governments and others. I know he did some work for Tillamook PUD as well. And so I'm happy that he's got another project going here, and I have full confidence that it will come out with the result that we all intend. And so I'm in support of this as well.
As am I. I think, yeah, I'm happy for this to move forward.
Okay. Madam Chair, in consideration of modification number 3 to professional services agreement number 6200 with RSS Architecture PC for the Tillamook County Health Center 8th Street Annex Addition and Remodel Project, I move approval.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Marlene. And you have one more. Item 10, consideration of modification number 1 to personal services agreement number 6501 with Reed Group for the Public Health Modernization Community Assessment and Improvement Plan Project. Marlene.
Yes, you've obviously seen the personal services agreement with the Reed Group before. This pertains to our public health modernization efforts, a large portion of which is community engagement, as well as engagement for our staff and feedback in developing the processes for communication and response to the whole breadth of things, from public health emergency and natural disaster preparedness to looking at communicable disease, to processes that relate to ensuring that we are reaching populations that are traditionally underserved or who may not have access to care. So we're asking for this non-funded extension just to allow more time to complete the project. It will not end May 31, 2024, but September 30, 2024, which is the proposed extension. Part of the reason for the extension is because of the overlap with our extensive community planning and strategic planning efforts that are all happening at the same time between January and June of this year. So we have communications planning, justice, diversity, equity, and inclusion planning, our own strategic planning, participating in the county strategic planning, and our public health modernization plan update. So the extension makes a lot of sense for our contractor and for us as a department at this point.
Terrific, thank you.
I'm completely in support. Marlene has listed all the different planning processes that her department is involved in, and there are a lot. And those also go out to the community and require and request feedback. So it's just, there's a lot happening, and I think it's taking a little longer, and fully understandable and support, moving this project out, the timeline out, so we can complete it in the best possible way.
Thank you.
Thank you, and I too support it. It's one of those things that you can't foresee when you start, and you do what you need to do to make it happen, and this makes perfect sense, so let's get it done.
Likewise, I agree.
All right.
We're ready for a motion.
Perfect. A consideration of modification number 1 to personal services agreement number 6501 with Reed Group for the Public Health Modernization Community Assessment and Improvement Plan Project. I move approval.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Marlene.
Thank you.
Okay. Item 11 is consideration of a personnel requisition for a new regular full-time fee collector in the Parks Department. So I'll carry this. This is, as some folks know, I'm the interim director of Parks, and we're looking at Parks staffing patterns. Parks has traditionally had different groups or pools of staff, those being county employed folks, volunteer park hosts, seasonal folks, and temporary employees. And so with this position, this isn't a new position in the sense that we have hired fee collectors through the temporary services agency, BBSI. So we've hired, and a lot of other positions also through BBSI. So this year, our HR director, Jody Wilson, has proposed bringing those hires into the county. So we're looking at a whole new operation, a whole new system. And if it works well, it'll save us money. So it's definitely worth a try, to be fiscally conservative, to not spend money contracting for temp employees that we can hire ourselves. It's a little bit of a gamble because it's been hard to hire people, and we'll need those people. So this is our first shot at trying this, and so these are positions that we have already had, that we currently need, that we're bringing into the county rather than hiring through BBSI. And in fact, as I reviewed this morning, I thought, oh, we should have made this for more than one. So we'll be back, but this is the first one. So the money's already there. The money is budgeted, approved. It's just that it's coming through the county and adding to our list of county employees as opposed to temp employees. Questions?
No, no questions. Jody and I have spoken about this, and I appreciate the effort to save the funds that we're currently spending through BBSI. When we do run an employee through BBSI, the cost it's quite high to have them do this for us. So I appreciate the effort to bring it house. I agree, it's a little dicey. We know that it went out of the county because of the challenges of hiring for seasonal and temporary. But I do believe that with the HR department and with Jody's expertise, it's a good time to make the effort and see if we can't make it happen. I see that Jody has her hand raised.
Jody.
Good morning. I wanted to just chime in a little bit about the conversion of utilizing BBSI employees over our either a full-time position if it is genuinely a position that runs year-round, because through Commissioner Bell's leadership, we've discovered that some positions do require someone full-time. Barview is there's a lot of winter campers. That is a full-time operation. It just doesn't close down in the summer. And BBSI was a temporary solution. We could only work them 1,040 hours through BBSI. And so through this conversion plan, we would pay BBSI 1.43 of their hourly rate, and that would go to BBSI. BBSI, after they were paying workers' comp, required liability insurance and such, were making about $7,000 per employee in their markup of their wages. And so I just want to talk through that, because when we look at a part-time or a seasonal employee, seasonal employees can work 40 hours for up to 6 months. They're not covered by the union. Our part-time employees, so if I only want to work 19 hours a week, I could also work part-time. Again, they're not eligible for the union, but it would allow us to staff that influx of costs. And really what we're paying for using those, this is a full-time benefit position, but the staffing model for the summer would be using those seasonal temporaries and those part-time staffing to backfill what we don't need for the full-time staff, if that makes sense.
It does, thank you.
I just wanted to throw some numbers in there about why I believe it's going to pencil out, and that our recruitment numbers over the past 6 months have improved tremendously. Where we used to have 1 or 2 candidates per post, we're having 9 to 20, which is lovely. And I do contribute that to a lot of the hard work that the BOC has been doing, addressing wages, county culture, and those types of activities. So I greatly appreciate that.
Thank you. I do agree that it pencils out, and that for people that we need to employ year-round, it's the right thing to do. I don't think for our year-round employees, we're not going to be making any money over using BBSI employees, because what we will pay in benefits is approximately what we would pay BBSI. However, I think we should be investing in those employees with benefits if we're employing them year-round. So that adds to Jody's point, to retention and morale, et cetera. It's the right thing to do. And so I think that's great. And I think this is, we will save money with the seasonal employees running it through the county. However, it will dramatically increase the demands on recruiting in the HR department. So that's, this is a what am I looking for? An experiment? That's not quite the right word, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Thank you. Pilot. That's exactly right. This is a pilot because I can definitely see the benefits and why it's worth trying, and also it could be difficult.
Well, thank you, Commissioner. I would support this as well. And for those, my thing with acronyms is BBI is Barrett Business Services
Thank you.
Incorporated.
Thank you.
So those who don't know, and they're a very legitimate, long-time temporary service, and they have an office here in Tillamook, I believe. And so they've been an integral part. And I think if this has issues as we roll forward, we could certainly go back to them. I don't think we've burned any bridges. And so I do support this, and it makes sense. My only question, I guess, is Commissioner Bell has done such a fine job. What are you doing weekends and evenings there? Can't you work in the fee booth out there and help us out?
Doug, you can find me at Barbie Jetty Park on weekends.
I
and some
probably can.
evenings. Yeah.
Anyway, no, Commissioner Bell and I went up there for a few times when she was out of the area, and Commissioner Bell out of the area, and visited with the people. And I'll just say again on the record, Tillamook County has an outstanding park system, and I've visited a number of county park systems across Oregon and others, and this is well-run, and maybe most importantly, it's self-sustaining. It requires no subsidies from the general fund. It generates funds from rentals and a few other things, some grants occasionally, and it pays its own way, including capital costs. And that is not the case in a good many park systems around Oregon and elsewhere. So good for us, good for them, and I think we're going to have a good season if all goes well. So I would support this change as well, and if something goes wrong, there are alternatives to deal with it. And I appreciate what you said about the impact on HR, because my working with them over the past few months is they are pretty heavily loaded and very busy. But I think sometimes when you ask a busy person to do something, it gets done sooner than if they were not.
Rachel, case in point.
There you go.
Thank you. Okay, I think we're ready for a motion.
Thank you, and thank you for the clarification between part-time and full-time. Full-time being the really important positions to have under the county, because we're allowed, as Jody said, 1,040 hours, but if we have a full-time person working through BBSI, we can run into issues with our union because it can appear that we are avoiding the union. So another reason the full-time positions become important to be a county position.
Right, and they have to be laid off.
Right.
Previously, when we had full-time positions through BBSI, they could work full-time for 9 months and then be laid off for 3. And then that's a terrible burden on them to have to figure out, what am I going to do for the next 3 months when I need income before I can go back to work for parks?
Right.
So we are glad to bring those people into the county family.
100%. Again, everything is complex. No matter what we do, we try to simplify it, but it's complex. Okay, Madam Chair, in consideration of a personnel requisition for a new regular full-time fee collector in the Parks Department, I move approval.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. Okay. Item 12 is consideration of a United States Department of the Interior, United States Geological Survey Joint Funding Agreement number 24YFJFA021 for water resource investigations. With us, we have Randy Thorpe, the Director of Tillamook County Emergency Management. Good morning.
Good morning. First of all, this agreement, I did run it by both Rachel and Bill, and they've approved it as to form, so we're ready to go that way. One thing I want to point out, this is for the physical period of October 1st of 2023 to September 30th of 24. And if you look at the first page, we did receive this on February 20th of this year. So I just want to make sure that we understand this was not Randy sitting on something for 4 or 5 months. So anyway, this is our annual contract agreement that we do with the United States Geological Society, USGS. And what it is that they are the ones that maintain and keep up our gauges on our rivers. And with this agreement, we partnership with them and pay a portion of the cost to maintain those. Our portion this year is $30,050. It went up from $29,820. So I guess they had some formula where they bumped it up by what, $230. So I'm not sure why, but that's not a very bad increase due to inflation. The gauges that this covers is the one on the Nestucca near Beaver, Trask River, Wilson River. They maintain 2, one by the Soley Smith Bridge, and then also further up the river on the Wilson that they may monitor, and also the Nehalem near Foss. This is important if you guys watch the gauges. We had the Nehalem gauge all of a sudden flatline on us this year, so phone call out, and they were able to get a technician down and fix that issue. And of course, it went out during our little spike of the rivers, and so of course it never goes out. They never go out when it's a normal flow. So that's a prime example of how they actually do maintain our gauges for us up there. So the gauges are highly important for us. Most everybody monitors them for flooding. It's also monitored for fishing, from what I understand. So our river gauges are very important. And so this contract allows us to participate with them and to help them share the cost of maintaining those gauges. Because I sure do not want to go clean out a gauge at 3 o'clock in the morning during a snowstorm. So anyway, that's what we have. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you. As your liaison, I'll just jump in and say that those gauges are extremely important. And in the time that I have lived here, I've seen how the use of those gauges has improved our responsiveness in predicting floods. So, you know, there was a time where it seemed like, I'm sure there was more to it than this, but it seemed like people would observe that there was a lot of rain, and then when it started, you know, flooding on 101, then the alarm would go out. And now it happens a lot sooner than that, because the emergency manager and lots of other people are watching those river gauges, because it can happen so fast and we don't necessarily see it. Sometimes what we're reacting to is the rain that's falling in the Coast Range. And we'll know it's raining, but it's raining a lot more in the Coast Range, and it can happen very fast. But the river gauges give us that information. So they're essential to emergency management and prediction. And I think that they have improved our preparedness and response rate, especially for flooding on North 101. So I don't think we could live without them at this point.
Well, another good example is I just texted Dan Weitzel to make sure he was aware, because the Nehalem is starting its upward climb. exactly because of the heavy snowfall and now rain upon the snowfall. And so he is again an emergency manager up there and he watches that like a hawk. Plus there's one more gauge we don't pay for, but we can monitor this further up on the Halem River that he also monitors because it's further up closer to where the snow is melting. And so there's another gauge up there that we can actually look into. So again, another prime example is right now is it's
true.
It's taking that vertical climb, and so it's without that gauge, you know, I mean, we can kind of surmise that that's going to happen, but it's nice to see the predictions that they have because they do all that work with the predictions on river levels.
Yeah, thank you. Commissioner Olson?
Well, I support this because for the reasons we talked about. I have one question, but I can tell you as someone who's fished down here for many, 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 many years, when the Wilson is between 5.5 and 7.2, that is when you call in sick and launch your drift boat at 10 Mile and float all the way down to Mills Bridge or wherever you're going. And
Right
just-
now is that time.
Yes, well, and it may soon blow out, and that's when you get the steelhead green water, just for those who aren't fishermen. But my question is there a way, or do they at all know how many hits they get on this? How many people actually look at it from time to time?
I don't know. That's probably a good question. It's probably, I don't think they could keep track of how many times it gets hit, but that's a question I'll ask.
Well, I was thinking they may have,
I was
you know,
curious.
how many views. A lot of things that go online these days can tell how many inquiries or hits or unique visitors there have been. Good question to ask.
Yeah, I think I will. That's interesting. I know that I've checked it probably 20 times in the last 2 hours, so I will skew
So
the,
it's-
I will
but see,
skew
you
the
might only
amount.
be one because you're the same URL where
Oh,
you
that's
are.
right, yeah, okay.
Thank you. No, I'm good with that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll be quick and then you can have the next shot, Bill. So I would agree with everything that's been said, including the fishing and including the fact that our house definitely skews it as well. Because between me watching as a county commissioner and thinking about what's going to happen in our county and my husband watching as a fishing guide, our house probably always has at least one device looking at these gauges. So they are super important. The safety factor for these is absolutely huge. And it was interesting at the winter preparedness meeting as we talked about how these gauges follow the weather prediction, because there's always just a little bit of a lag. And it was interesting, the folks said, you know, they were working on shortening that lag, and I have seen that this year. I used to always hear from my husband, have you looked at the weather and looked at the river? The river's not showing anything, but here's what the weather says. And so I'm finding that they are definitely closer together because they are different. They found out they were different, I don't want to say departments, but kind of within NOAA that were needed to be put together. So it is very helpful.
Great, thank you. All right.
Bill wanted to.
I was just saying,
What is it now?
it's comical, when you brought this up, I looked at my app
Have you got
on
it
my phone.
bookmarked?
And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
check the Trask River daily
Yep.
and for the fishing purposes, and I know I am not the only person
true.
around here or from the valley or
Nope.
anywhere else that looks at it, so.
100%.
I hit that app probably more than any other one I have on my phone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
great example.
We need to create our own app and you have to like pay 10 cents a hit or something on it.
There's a
Ah.
money
We
maker
can,
for
yeah,
us.
we can make some
Yeah.
extra money for the county coffers here.
Okay, I think we're ready for a
All
motion.
right. Madam Chair, in consideration of United States Department of the Interior, United States Geological Survey Joint Funding Agreement number 24YFJFA021 for water resource investigations, I would move approval.
Second?
We have a motion and a second, and I do have a little bit of further discussion. I think that we should give credit to the Tilda's Group. Tilda's Group
yeah.
helps fund this, don't they? They contribute, remind me of the title of Tilda's Group.
Tillamook Bay Flood Improvement District.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. And they fund a couple $1,000s a year. They help fund this river gauge
Yes.
system. Yeah.
Good point, thank you.
Yeah. So thank you to the Tillamook Bay Flood Improvement District for your partnership in this. And now, I think we have a motion and a second. Any other further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Randy.
You bet, and I'm off for the rest of the day.
Because you're gearing up for a big few days ahead, Randy.
No, fishing, you got me excited now. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 13 is consideration of a contract for goods with Tillamook Motor Company, Inc. for the Parks Department vehicle purchase of a 2024 Ford F-550 and a 2023 F-150. I'll carry this as the interim director of Parks. Both of these trucks were ordered years ago, and luckily for us, we get the 2024 550, but it was actually ordered a couple of years ago. So these are holdovers from our supply chain problem. Parks vehicles some of them are literally falling apart. And so we are thrilled that the supply chain has opened up and we're getting some new trucks. So I'm eager to have new trucks on the lot, and people are just going to be, it's going to improve morale at the Parks Department.
100%.
Any questions,
The
comments?
only question, you said there's an F-550. I don't recall that is that a typo or is that actually one of their models?
It's
I
a
thought
little dump truck.
It's a little dump truck. Okay, good then, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Madam Chair, in consideration of a contract for goods with Tillamook Motor Company, Inc. for the Parks Department vehicle purchase of a 2024 Ford F-550 and a 2023 F-150, I move approval.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Item 14 is consideration of a letter of support for the Nehalem Bay Health District's request for congressionally directed spending. Commissioner Scarr.
Thank you. So I will correct, and I apologize, I did not get that title corrected before the agenda went out, before we got here today. It is not actually for congressionally directed spending. It is for grant and donation funding into the future. So last year, we did submit a letter for congressionally directed spending, and they did receive that funding. And so what they are looking for with this letter is that although they have received that funding and they have their bond went out and they're moving forward with their new building, of course, as with all capital projects that have occurred over the last 3 years, inflation has been a factor. And so they are finding that they need to raise some additional funds to wrap up and finish out the costs of the project. This letter is intended to be something they can submit to foundations and or share with potential donors as they ask them to just top off that project. So that's just for clarity. So as I make my motion, I'm going to make a slight change in that title to indicate it's for grant and donation funding. So any questions?
No, I'm good. I'll listen to what the motion is and go from there.
Okay. I also am in full support.
Okay, perfect. This is an exciting project for the new pharmacy and then ultimately housing on the hill and lots of good stuff. So Madam Chair, in consideration of a letter of support for the Nehalem Bay Health District's request in support of grant and donation funding, I move approval.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Item 15 is consideration of modification number 5 to professional services agreement number 6122 with Consor for the Pacific City Woods Parking Management Plan Design Project. Rachel Haggerty, Chief of Staff.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
Tillamook County hired Murray Smith, which is now known as Consor with the name change, in June 2021 to develop the implementation strategy for the Cape Kiwanis Master Plan that had recently been completed. The result was the Board of Commissioners' adoption of the Kiwanda Corridor Project preferred concept in August 2022. This preferred concept included 5 different strategies: the Cape Kiwanis parking lot reconstruction, relocation of Webb Park, completion of the Nestucca Valley Community Alliance on Tillamook Lightwave property skate park, development of the recently acquired Jensen property, and the multi-use path which ties all of these projects together. After the board's adoption, the county immediately moved forward with the first strategy, the reconstruction of the Cape Kiwanis parking lot. We executed modification 3 to the contract in September 2022, and this was for design, permitting, and construction oversight of the lot. Modification 4 was later executed, and that extended the contract through December 24. This allows for sufficient time to close out the project construction. Along the way, as Consor being the team lead for this complex, multidiscipline, multi-million, multi-year project, Consor had Consor has provided outstanding and consistent leadership, creativity, response, and deliverables to further the Kiwanda Corridor project, including work that has been completed, approved by me, under the additional work contingency task of their contract. All of this work has been tracked over time, knowing that when we approach the contract ceiling, we would reconcile the costs. Some of the items in the contract we expected wouldn't be fully expended against, and so those savings would carry some of the costs that were in the contingency item. So that brings us to today, and today I have a request before you for modification 5, which adds $327,867 to Consor's contract. This covers the work associated with the Cape Kiwanda parking lot, the Jensen property, and Webb Park. And all of those details are further briefed in the modification 5 scope, and I've briefed you on that before today's meeting. At the conclusion of the contract in December, the contract will have spanned 4 fiscal years. It might be the longest contract I've had here while working at the county. After running an analysis of the projected final construction costs due to value engineering, scope reduction, and state grants that the county has received, this project is slated to come in well under budget, sufficient to cover Consor's this modification before you for Consor, and still have a net savings overall between the engineering contract and the construction contract. So at this time, I'm recommending this modification to you for approval.
Thank you. Questions, comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, I reviewed this shortly before our meeting today with Ms. Haggerty, and having been around construction projects with public money for a long time, it is rather unusual to see a project come in under budget. And of course, the project is not done, and there may be some other items before us and items to consider, and some will come before this board, some won't. But it's a game changer in that part of the world. And so I'm in full support of what's happening. Let's keep it going. There's lots of inertia. And then perhaps when we consider this motion and vote on it, we could ask Ms. Haggerty to talk about some of the parking changes on the record here. That's now public knowledge. There's been some material sent out and some other things happening. So if we could take a moment to update anyone tuning in, I think that would be very helpful as well. But what I've seen so far and understanding the project, and I look at it almost daily, it's a game changer, and it's not going to cost any general fund money. There's lots of funding sources that are being utilized. And to say we're going to have a substantial savings from where we are now is a bit remarkable for public agencies. It's not the norm. So good for us, good for the taxpayers, good for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm in complete agreement. This is definitely, fantastic to be expecting to finish under budget and knowing that, there's going to be some changes as we've seen, but it is all par for the course in a capital project. So I am in support.
As am I. I think it is thrilling. I'm repeating what my colleagues have said here, but it's thrilling to be in a big project and find substantial savings in one area that will more than offset additional expense in another area. So this is, I don't know if folks who are watching have been tracking this all along, but we have this big project in Pacific City. It's expensive, but we're actually coming in well ahead of budget in one area and less behind in another. And so even once we cover that difference, we're still ahead. So I think it's fabulous, and bravo, Rachel Haggerty, well done. It's an extraordinary thing in a project like this to say, oh, wow, we're ahead of budget. So good job, you.
Thank you for that. I would like to pass on that appreciation to our team because, Consor, they are really amazing. They're just my right hand on this whole project, and they're doing most of the work on this. I would put it on them. So, I think having our we have a weekly construction meeting where we have several people from our team, several people from their team meeting, Public Works attends, just to make sure all of this is running smoothly. So, and that's been great.
Terrific. And finally, I'll just remind folks that most of this is TLT money, and none of it is general fund money. Some of it is the parking fee money, and so it's transient lodging tax and visitor fees that we are reinvesting back into Tillamook County. So we can feel great about that.
There's also a $750,000 OPRD grant, if I'm not mistaken, in there, which was
Yeah.
another fantastic step that we were able to take that we didn't know when we approved the project, whether we'd be awarded. So this is great work for Rachel. Thank you.
Yep, and we also have $25,500 from Oregon Department of Transportation. You're gonna keep us on our toes, Doug. That is paying fully for the EV charging stations that we're installing.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. I
Okay.
think we're ready for a motion.
Madam Chair, in consideration of modification number 5 to professional services agreement number 6122 with Consor for the Pacific City Woods Parking Management Plan Design Project, I move approval.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. Those all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Rachel. Just crash. Okay, so we're to board concerns. I wonder, Commissioner Olson, would you like to read this announcement about the Pacific City parking lot?
All right, I will, and then perhaps Rachel can help with any further discussion. So, word for word. Beginning March 4th, 2024, the Cape Kiwanda parking lot in Pacific City will be temporarily closed for reconstruction work. The Cape Kiwanda parking lot reconstruction project is a part of the larger Kiwanda Corridor project. Extreme weather delays, minor unforeseen design changes, and landslide closure of Sand Lake Road have delayed the project. The full temporary closure plan for the parking lot will allow the project to be completed on time and fully operational by peak summer season. Public access to the beach will be maintained, including boat launching activities via Doryman's Way. Limited parking will be made available during Oregon spring break and will be free. Free, I'll say that twice. Additional parking will become available in May as the north side of the lot is completed. Pedestrian access to the beach is encouraged along the Pelican Brewing sidewalk. Additional signage and resource maps will be placed throughout the area. For more information, please visit, and I won't read I'll just say, go to the county's website and work your way down to the Kiwanda Corridor project. And I will add, just before we talk about this, the chamber will have this as part of the program next Tuesday, including some information about alternatives and where parking might be available around the community, recognizing that spring break is only a few weeks away. So with that, thank you, and perhaps Rachel or others could speak to that and add to it or take questions from us. Thank you.
I'm perfectly good. I think it's been explained, and while we would rather not have entirely closed the parking lot, the two pieces we had to weigh were completely closing it now and having it at least partially closed all the way through the summer, or completely closing it now and allowing it to be fully open for the busiest season. And that just seemed to make a whole lot more sense. So I guess I would say the lesser of the evils for those who are really thinking, why in the world would you close the parking lot? Rebuilding a parking lot requires you to resurface the whole thing, dig underneath it, do a lot of pieces that you cannot do while people are using it. So lesser of the evils.
Agreed. Yeah, I think, not to repeat things that have already been said, but our goal is to have it open by the 4th of July. And if we don't close it fully, we won't make the goal. So by closing it fully, we will hopefully, I'm knocking on wood now, we will hopefully be able to have it open fully by the 4th of July. And so this just seems like the step that we have to take to get there. So we apologize to everyone in advance for the inconvenience and hope that it will be short-lived. And this time next year, we're all just going to be thrilled with our new parking lot, and we'll be moving forward.
I do want to just add one thing. Thank you for those comments and the support. If people are wondering, why is this parking lot so expensive and why is it taking so long? This is not just redoing a parking lot. We're demolishing the restroom. It's a complicated design, the way it's positioned and oriented into the parking lot. We're redoing the Hungry Harbor boat ramp, Doryman's Way boat ramp, and how people can access that. A new gate system, a whole new underground system of stormwater management. Currently, stormwater is just running right off the lot and down the ramp, and that's part of our erosion problems at the ramp. So that's an extensive piece that it just might not be noticeable. Sidewalks, and so it's more than just a parking lot, and I think that gets missed in sometimes when we're talking about it.
Thank you.
Thank
I
We probably
appreciate
should have
that.
given it a new name or something, but a little too late for that.
I appreciate that. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I'm going to read a couple of announcements, and then we're going to go into executive session. The commissioners will hold a board briefing on Wednesday, February 28th, today, 2 p.m., to discuss weekly commissioner updates. The meeting will be held in the Commissioners' Meeting Room 106 in the Tillamook County Courthouse, 201 Laurel Avenue. The teleconference number is 971-254-3149, conference ID 866-914-607#. And the commissioners, at least 2 of us, maybe 3, you're invited, will attend an Economic Development Council Strategic Planning Workshop on Thursday, February 29th, 2024, tomorrow afternoon, all afternoon, 12 to 5. The meeting will be held at the PRI building in room 107, 4506 East 3rd Street. And the reason for this is that I'm the chair of the EDC and Doug is the liaison, and so we're both there, so it's a noticed public meeting. So with that, we will go into executive session at 10:50 a.m. under ORS
192-6602F.
Thank you, Bill. And it is 10:50, so why don't we take a recess? How much time do we want? 5 minutes, 10 minutes? Okay, so we'll be back at 10:55 in executive session, at which time we may very well have a vote. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Well, darn, I just wish I had known about the EDC thing. That would have been good. But I trust you two to come back and share with me. I unfortunately have medical appointments tomorrow, so.
Thank you. Sorry, it's not, it's the EDC board. And it's just the EDC board, but now Doug and I are both in it.
Right.
I'm the voting
Brainstorming.
member and Doug is with us, so that's what you would totally. How do we know when we're ready, Rachel? That you guys have learned.
Guys don't change. They just might be a little more sneaky.
They're more
Not the
careful.
ones who were already doing that. Maybe I'll clarify that.
Yes, they do. Out of fear, if nothing else.
They should want to.
I think that's the point, out of fear, if nothing else, or something. Ready?
Okay, we are out of executive session and will reconvene this board meeting at 11:47 a.m.
Thank you. I would move, Madam Chair, I would move to approve Jody Wilson, HR Director, to provide written authorization to Ms. Arndt to continue her services up to a sum not to exceed $35,000.
And I will second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Aye. All right. This meeting is adjourned at 11:48. a.m.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
You have to now go watch a webinar on how to get in the voters pamphlet because it's that time of year.
Oh, yeah, it comes up quick.
Yep.
Are we gonna have one this year?
The
Good
state is
question.
doing one, I believe.
For
Based on
20
everything I'm reading on the Secretary of State website, there is to be a voter pamphlet
Yeah,
because it's primary elections for.
Right. oh, for sure they'll have one,
Yeah.
but you meant us, right? Yeah.
Oh, are we gonna have
That's,
a local one?
we ought to talk to Christie about it, yeah.
Several,
No, but there's certainly a lot of call for them. Yeah. Yeah,